And I will see if we can do this where I spotlight. I'm not sure how we do this. Let me just double check and see if I can figure out how to do the spotlight thing. Yeah, there we go. So now you should be able to see a little better what my fly looks like. So the initial fly is a fairly simple, straightforward fly. It's a zonker. It uses rabbit strip and Mylar tubing. That's pretty much it, except the one I'm going to tie will have a little collar on it, perhaps. The initial one probably won't. So the first one I'm going to tie is going to be on a size 6 4x long hook, so that because it's a bigger fly, the first one is a little larger fly than the second. And so that's the hook. Now, to make the body, we're going to put this Mylar tubing on, and to shape the Mylar, what I'm going to use for this one is I'm going to take some of this golf club weighting lead strip, and I'm going to cut it so that it's about the length, a little less than the length of the shank of the hook, and I'm going to cut it about a little more than gap, maybe twice the gap width. That's a square piece. And then what you do is you fold it over the hook, and that gives you that piece like that. And because there's paper in behind, it's not going to stick yet. And then you take your scissors and you cut the body shape out of the lead, and then you take the paper off and you put that sticky lead over the hook and glue it on. It glues it to itself. And then you end up with this body shape. So that's the easy way to make the body shape. The Mylar tubing comes in a whole range of kinds and colors. So this stuff is a pearl. That's what I'm going to use. But you can also get silver and gold. And this Mylar cord silver is they come in different diameters as well. This one is kind of a medium large. There's some that are even bigger. This one's a bigger, almost a 1/4 inch. So then what we do is we need to get this tubing off. So I'm going to cut the end square. There's the end of the tubing. And I'm going to measure about a shank length in front of and behind the hook. And I'm going to cut that right square again. There. And then you're going to take your tweezers and get in and get this fiber core, and you're going to pull it out. And you end up with this hollow tube. And before I put this hollow tube on the back, I'm just going to tease out a few fibers off the one end from being all woven together, because that's going to be the flash near the tail of the minnow. Once I tune that out, I'm going to put it over the eye of the hook and feed the whole thing down the hook shank until I extend a good hook gap behind the bend of the hook, and leaving a good hook gap in front of the eye. Makes it easier to trim later. Then I'm going to take my thread, and I'm going to use all of 6/0 for this. Now, in some YouTube videos, they show tying the thread on first and then sliding the tubing down around the thread. I found that didn't work too well because it doesn't slide around the thread well. I find it easier to just get the tubing on there and then pinch it down on the hook with the thread trapped between my thumb and the and the tubing. And I'll do the first couple of good solid wraps, like a pinch wrap. And then I'm going to grab the tag end of the thread and pull it in front and wrap over the tag. So that's tying in your thread over the tubing. And that's right behind where the lead ends. So it's on the hook shank. Look what happened there. Got that on the hook point. So get a good solid wrap on there so that nothing's going to spin. Trim the piece out of there. And I'm just going to make sure that I've got all this leftover tubing at the back all unwound and unbraided so that it flares out. And then the next bit is I'm going to take a little dab of super glue. I'm just going to get on the thread here. And a little dab right there where the thread is on the Mylar. And this is just to make sure that nothing rotates around the hook shank. Okay. Now a rabbit strip. That's the fundamental material for this. And you can get rabbit strip in the standard zonker cut, or you can get it in the standard cut. The standard cut is kind of cut on the bias with the nap of the fur, whereas the zonker strip is not. It's cut straight on the nap of the fur. And it comes in different thicknesses. So I've got this stuff you can't read backwards. It's micro rabbit strip, which means that it's about an eighth, that the leather part's about an eighth of an inch wide. Some of the bigger rabbit strips are almost a quarter inch wide. So I'm going to pick where the nap goes out and the fur hangs on the back. And I'm going to measure this against the hook shank. Now I know where the eye of the hook is, and I'm going to measure from the eye to where that tail is, just with the fur, not with the strip itself, but with the fur. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to place that right on top of where the tie-in point for the Mylar is. And I'm going to pull the nap of the fur forward at that point to expose the leather underneath the skin of the rabbit. And sometimes you need to get in here with your bodkin and pull the last few fibers forth so that you can see the fur directly, the leather directly. I'm going to lay that down right over top of where I've got the thread wraps. And I'm going to wrap it down. Make sure it's square on top. And again, couple of good firm wraps. I can wet this stuff to keep it out of the way too. Get 2 or 3 wraps. Make sure that's sitting right square on top of the hook. Then I'm going to take the rabbit strip and I'm going to pull it right back. And I have a material clip on my vise here that's going to hold it out of the way, I think, with any luck. There we go. Then I'm going to do a couple more wraps in here. And once again, a little bit of super glue on the thread, just the last half an inch. And I'm going to whip finish right there. And between the super glue and the whip finish, it's going to cinch everything down there. And then I'm going to cut the thread off. Now you can see I've got this tubing is all the way up to the front, and I'm going to leave it hanging out over the front of the fly. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to grab the thread, and right where the that lead body ends, which is probably a good 2 or 3 eye widths behind the eye. I'm going to lay the thread on and just gently make a soft loop around the Mylar and pull up. I'm going to do that again. 2, 3, and then I'm going to pull the tag end forward and do another couple of wraps. So once again, that ties that whole sucker in, and it gets the Mylar body around that underlying lead shape. And that's the lead shape, keeps it from collapsing underneath, and it gives it that little fish body shape. And then I'm going to pull all of these loose bits of Mylar back, and I'm going to wrap in front of them. Turn them off. Tie them down. And then take my thread right back to, again, where that front of that body is. Now I'm going to measure the rabbit strip again. I'm going to lay it down. And right where we're just right behind the eye, I'm going to take this fur again, and I'm going to stroke this stuff back to expose the leather underneath. Once again, I'll use my bodkin to get a few of the extra strands so the leather is completely exposed. I'm going to hold the right hand, pinch it, and do a wrap over top. 1, 2, 3. Taking out my bobbin here. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pull back and I'm going to wrap in front of it. A couple of wraps. And come in with my scissors and trim the rabbit strip right down tight to the hook. There we go. There's that little stub end that's sticking out. And I'm going to wrap that over that and wrap that down as best I can. Might have to flatten it out with my thumb first, thumbnail. And I'm just going to make a good solid head on this fly with thread. A little bit of a taper to it. And then we'll whip finish. Double whip finish to make sure it's secure. And trim them out. And we get my little Velcro on a stick, and I'm going to smooth all of that rabbit fur back. And that's it. That's your basic socker.
Dave, how long is that fly? Looks about 4 inches from here.
No, it's 2.5, maybe 3 at the outside. Now, in fact, I think it's a little long. I've got more fur out the back than I really would like. So what I do is I come in here and I just get my scissors in on that leather rabbit strip and snip it off. And then I'll have a slightly shorter body, and probably the leather part of the rabbit strip should probably be no more than 1.5 gap lengths behind the bend, because you've got lots of length of fur here.
Yeah.
And if it's too long, then there's a tendency for the strip to wrap around the bend of the hook and foul it up. So that's him. That's the basic one. Now we'll go on to number 2. Oh, the last thing I do is, and I don't do it here because it needs to dry, is just put some hard as nails around the head to give it a little bit of a gloss to it. Okay, next one.
Dave, just a comment on that. What I've done then is stick on some of those plastic eyes right on the head, which
Yes,
seems
you
to add a
can.
little zap to it.
Yeah, you can do that. I can't do that on smaller sizes. I don't have small enough eyes.
Right.
Now there's one here. This one here, I probably could get it on, but it's a little bit.
This one, I painted these eyes on. I don't know if you can see.
Now there's a thought.
And what I did is I ran this. I had better use of
Let
my
me just take
hand.
it off spotlight here for a sec, and then I can see everybody. So let me look again.
This one uses a wire underneath,
Yeah.
and which your weight would be much better. And along the top of the fly is this peacock curl.
Mhm.
We use the same basis for your threading of the material, the base material, and then we put a marabou fly feather at the end and a little red. This was great for sea trout, which would be equivalent to your cutthroat out here.
Sea run brookies?
Yeah.
Okay, so this pattern is a little more like that. It's still basically a zonker. I'm going to use, this time around, I'm going to use some brown thread. The difference here is this is a much smaller hook. This is a size 8. And it's 3x long. It's a light wire. It's not, as you can see, it's nowhere near the size and chunkiness of the previous hook, which was a size 4, I think, 4x long. So we're going to be tying a much smaller fly. And for this smaller fly, I discovered this product at Robinson's the other day, and it's micro fine pine squirrel fur strips. And it comes in a variety of different colors. There's also a bunch of similar stuff that they call fine cut. And this is another one. This is a brown one. That one was orange. You can get mink zonkers. This one is chartreuse. And the difference between these pine squirrel and the mink ones is the length of the fur between the leather part and the tip. So these ones, these pine squirrel ones, it's a very short fur. These ones, the mink is a little longer. Whereas the rabbit ones, the micro rabbit strips, the fur is very long. So for this small fly, I'm going to use the smaller version, this pine squirrel one. I like the look of it for the zonker strip. Mylar tubing is going to be a lot smaller. Let's just get on the here spotlight again, so you can see better. So there's the fur. The Mylar is 1/8 inch almost. It's not very big, and that will make a very skinny body fly, which is what I want for these smaller flies. For the body, I'm going to use a lead-free wire, and it's round, and it really is quite bulky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay that down on my desktop here, and I'm going to take a straight hard piece of metal, and I'm going to flatten it out just by scraping over the top of it. Let's get it here. This is going to make it easier for me to wrap the lead-free wire. And I'm not going to use a lot of it. I'm only going to do about halfway down the shank. I'm going to get 6, maybe 7 turns. And the trick with this lead-free wire is it's stiffer than lead, and it's getting the little tag ends to sit down. So what I do with that is I try and take the pair of pliers and mash the end down a bit. If you were using actual lead, it's a lot easier. I just don't want that little end sticking out, because it's going to catch the Mylar tubing when I try and slide it over. I'm going to put this few wraps of lead towards the front of the hook. So it's not right in the middle, it's sort of leaning towards the front of the hook, because I want this to be the thicker part of the body of the fake minnow. Take my thread, start at the eye, cover the hook shank down to where the lead is, and then I'm going to wrap over top of the lead, and that will fix the lead in place. I'll just do a few little wraps in behind to make a little dam behind, so the lead's not going to, wire is not going to slide back and forth on the hook. And then do the same on the front. And take my thread right back to probably where the barb of the hook was. Now, the thing with Mylar tubing, when you get the core out, is it's almost transparent. So if I was just to slip the Mylar tubing over top of all of that, it's you're going to see the lead and you're going to see the wire of the hook. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a body underneath, and I'm going to use a light orange, very fine dubbing. I'm going to make a really fine dubbing noodle here, starting at the back of the hook. And like I say, starting roughly where the barb of the hook was, I'm going to wrap that forward. Not very thick dubbed body, just enough to cover the hook shank and provide a little bit of color underneath the pearl Mylar. Now, if you're using silver or gold, you wouldn't need to do that, because the silver or gold isn't transparent, whereas this pearl stuff is. So again, I'm just gonna cover up this lead enough with a nice tight dubbing noodle, just to give this color. And I'm going to make this part just a little thicker than at the front than at the back. Teeny bit more dubbing here. It's not a thing of beauty, just enough to provide a cover over top of that lead wire, and there we go. And I'm going to wrap my thread back underneath, right to where the end of the dubbing needle was. I'm going to take my Mylar tubing again, square the end off. And I'm going to do the same thing, measure about the gap width in front of and behind the eye. Trim that, cut that off to size. Get my tweezers and sneak in here and grab just the core and pull the core out. Now this one's not going to come out quite as there it is. And once again, with my dubbing needle, I'm going to fray out the back end just a little bit. I'm going to slide this up over the eye of the hook, if I can get it to go. And slide that whole shebang down and hanging out over the back end where the thread is now. Going to wrap that on there. Fray the loose ends. Now my little mini zonker strip, pine squirrel strip. And again, just measure that so that the leather strip is going to extend maybe half a shank length from where it's going to tie in. And I'm going to pull back the body fur part to expose the leather underneath. Lay it right down on that spot. Quick wrap over, make sure it sits on top. And then flip the rabbit fur back again, the pine squirrel fur, I should say. And once again, I'm going to just get a little bit of super glue on the thread. And I'm going to whip finish this in there. Clear. And then again, take my tubing and pinch down just in front with the thread, just in front of the lead weight. I'm going to leave a little more room at the front this time. Pull up. This particular tubing has decided it's going to unravel on me. Pull it forward a bit. There we go. Now I got it. I'm just going to wrap right in front of where the lead weight is there, because it's going to be, it's going to have a little more of an extended front out here, because I'm going to put a collar on. Again, pull these bits up, trim them off tight. One of the disadvantages of this is if you have, like me, you have carpet underneath, I'm going to need the vacuum cleaner to clean up all the little bits of Mylar that are stuck underneath. Bring the rabbit strip forward and do the same thing here. Separate out the fur by stroking it forward. Expose the leather strip underneath. And then I'm going to do this wrap over 1, 2, 3. Go in front. I'm going to get in here and trim that little bit of leather off and wrap it down. The tag down. Now at this point, I'm going to put a wing on this thing. What I have is some really nice soft hackle orange stuff that I have off of a cake that I've had for a number of years. Another one of those Hoffman hen cakes. I'm going to just strip the fluff off the bottom edge of the feather. Then I'm going to pull back, a good half a shank length to expose the stem at the tip. And then I'm going to turn the feather so that the curved side is facing away from me. And I'm going to tie in this tip facing forward. A couple of good wraps, and then I'm going to pull it up. A couple of wraps in front to lock it in. Trim that tip out. Then I'm going to wrap wet style. I'm going to fold the hackle back over its stem and slowly wrap around. And I should get like maybe 3 wraps here. That's about right. Wrap over the stem. Front to lock it in. Could have done a neater job of that. I'm going to wet my fingers and I'm going to stroke all of those hackle fibers back. And I'm going to build this little bit of a head here with thread, not a massive head. The idea is to use the thread to force those hackle fibers to lay back over top of the body a bit. And then we'll whip finish. One more. And this is going to stay in the vise, so I'm going to trim that little bit of mylar that's sticking out there. Right there. Didn't want to come out. Should have trapped that better. All right. And this time I'm going to put some hard as nails on that head to give it a little bit of shine. And of course the eye of the hook is going to get a little bit of glue in it. So there's this little trick where you make use of your trimmed off feather, expose the quill and stick the quilt through the eye of the hook. It maybe won't go. There we go. And just draw the feather through the eye, and that cleans all of the glue out. Still got a little piece of mylar there I don't like. There we go. And that's him. So there we go. And I can use my little Velcro on a stick thing to smooth out the pine squirrel fur. I got one little piece of mylar that's kind of extra long here. And that's him. And that makes a very nice small fly compared to the other one, which you can see is considerably bigger. Probably could shorten that up too a little bit because I can take a little bit of tail, looks a little on the long side. There we are. That's what I did. So there you go.
You can fish that, Dave.
Yeah, I think that worked out. I like this this size. I think I'm going to tie a bunch of those up in different colors. I'm going to have to go to Robinson's and get some more of these pine squirrel strips.
I saw a gray squirrel on Cedar Hill Road yesterday.
Gray squirrel. We've got a whole family of squirrels that come around and chew off all sorts of things and dig in all our flower beds for bulbs and stuff. They're a nuisance.
Well, you know, the squirrels make good crosscut or straight cut zonker strips too.
I can tell that. Yeah, the ones here are really funny. They got little white behind their ears. They're and very bushy. We saw one that looked like a rat yesterday because it had no fur in its tail. I suspect somebody was trying to eat him and he got away.
Dave,
We
how
have
would you
black
fish
ones as
that?
well.
What was that, Bill?
I'm asking, how would you fish that zonker?
I would fish that on probably a type 3 sink and fish it like a streamer. Oh, you could probably cast it with a. It's unweighted. It's got a little bit of weight, so it'll sink a little bit. But if you want to get it down, you'd have to use a type 3 sink line or something like that. I'd fish it any way I would a small streamer fly. No, the bigger ones, they're useful with a very short, stiff leader when you're casting to pike. Particularly in very gaudy colors. So, Florin, you're up next.
Oh boy. Okay, I'm up. Then let me share screen and flies with you here. So here's another zonker that I've been fishing in Alberta. So this one's got rubber legs. You can see it's a dubbed body, a bit of crystal flash under the rabbit, and should turn off this light so you can see better. And a little bit of something pinkish or reddish for a throat, and all of this is tied behind a cone. All right, so this is one version. There's another one, and it has a deer collar here. So it's a laborious, it's a lot of work, but they work well. Same idea with a bit of red for the throat. So what I'm going to do then is something. I've been quite busy the last little while, so I have to stick to I have to stick to simpler flies. And so what I was going to do is this fairly easy to tie general fry pattern, as it's called in Lindgren's book. And he attributes this fly to Haig Brown. Now, the original pattern calls for some orange in the tail, some orange in the throat, and then a wing of mixed polar bear colors. Now, I don't have the mixed polar bear colors. And so I'm playing here with the light to give you an idea of how this actually looks in various light conditions. And instead, I'm using this crystal flash that's actually called mixed colors on the label. Okay, so whatever. KF13, I guess, is the magic code if you're trying to source this. Anyway, I find that this does look, at least in the picture, it looks pretty close to what the polar bear original must have looked like. So I'm going with it. All right, so the ingredients here are fairly standard. This is one of those black up eye salmon hooks. In this particular case, what I'm using here is a Togen's hook in a size 6, which is rather on the large size. One can scale this down rather easily. And the thread is black 6/0 uni thread. So go back to about where the hook starts to slope down, and take a little bit of orange hackle here. That's all I'm going to use for the tail. So I have an orange hackle. I'm slowly building up my strange colors collection so I can tie these things. So now I have orange. Get a bunch of fibers, kind of line them up right off before pulling them off. So just line up so that it looks like a satisfactory tail. And then just grab the whole bunch and pull it by the tips. And this way, I'm hoping to end up with a properly aligned bunch of fibers for the tail. Okay, so then I take the tail, I measure it up, put it against the hook, and I attach it. And here, if you're careful, actually, you can just go and attach the whole thing in one go. All right, then I need a rib because I'm going to be using Mylar tinsel. So that's going to be some uni wire, the medium size. So for a hook this huge, you can go with a slightly thicker wire. I'm going to attach that. Now this particular hook is one of those hooks where the eyes form by just doubling back the wire a little bit. So there's quite a jump here in the thickness you have to work with. So I'm going to be building up the body just behind the point where the wire is cut there. So that's where I'm going to start my rib. This is going to smooth over that gap a little bit. And it's also a helpful reminder not to overcrowd the eye. Okay, so then go with the wire back here and make sure I go exactly to the point where I've tied my tail in. So I just grab the tail with my fingers just to be on the safe side. Okay, so now that I have all of this in place, the next thing is some Mylar. And size 10 is usually too large for most flies, but for something this big, that's about the right one. And this is a one side silver, one side gold. And I'm going to tie the gold side up because I want a silver body. So here, tie this in where the tail went and just go forward. I'm going to go forward all the way to just behind that point, which is very visible from my side, not so visible from yours. where the wire cut is. Okay. And then I'm just going to wrap this forward. Now I don't have any thick thread set up on the Norvise bobbin, so I'm using my standard bobbin here, so I have to. It's not so easy to rewind. So this is just the usual wrap. Just make sure you get overlapping turns. Inevitably, somewhere, some gap might develop. You know, this thing is not, it's not perfect. You can pinch it between fingers a little bit to make sure it doesn't go all haywire. I could double wrap it, but it feels to me a little unnecessary. Okay, and now that I've reached this point, I'm just going to go over, attach this, bend it back once, go back with the thread, and then just trim it. Okay, this is going to ensure that this thing is not going to slip or anything. Okay, now the ribbing, I'm going to counter rib this. Just the wire and uniformly spaced turns. It's a bit challenging because all this shiny materials produce a fair bit of glare under my light. But if you tie sufficiently many flies, despite the fact that you already have all the flies you need, you get to tie with your mind's eye a little bit. So that helps. You just need to know where the thread is. You don't have to see it. Okay, so now we've got the body. And the only thing that's needed before we put the wing is we need to add a little throat here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the orange hackle. And I'm going to collect another little clump of fibers and pull them off the feather. Okay, so here's my throat, and I'm going to measure this, transfer to the other hand. Don't trim these ends. This is going to be helpful. Just keep those in place. Position it underneath at the tie-in point, and go back 1 or 2 turns. Now, once you've done this, that throat originally sits at a bit of an angle. Okay, so you can straighten it up, adjust its length, do whatever while it's still somewhat loosely tied here. Okay. Now, make sure you attach it solidly. There we go. And at this point, we can just cut off the waist.
She is overtired and is going to struggle all day.
Thank you.
Okay.
She fought sleep.
Just cover up the butt ends.
No, she is overtired and fighting every conversation. You have to go
Bring
eat.
back.
Okay, I
They're
need
really
you.
vaccinations.
It's, yeah, sure. Or Chelsea. Overtired Chelsea.
Well, it's hard.
She
to
doesn't
be
get
overtired.
vaccinated every day. She fights sleep.
Hello?
It's
Whoever
hard.
is on there, can you please mute?
And please don't be impatient
Sweetheart.
with being
You
overtired
are
because
going to-
Hello?
I had to, how I did it.
what did you do?
Hello? Can you please mute?
Okay. Well, it's good to expose kids to fly tying at an early age, I guess. They'll pick up the habit, you know. It's okay. That's fine. Not a problem. All right, so the next ingredient is going to be a little bit of an underwing of bright white polar bear. I have a little scrap piece here. And I don't want too much of this. I'm trying to keep my flies on the sparse side. So I'm just going to separate a little clump here and cut it off the hide nice and close. And then I'm going to pick out the underfur. There's a fair bit of underfur with polar bear, and it's really very nice stuff. So actually what I'm doing with this, I have a little box here, and it goes in a little compartment, and I'm going to find a use for dubbing. I also suspect that this is something that's going to make very floaty flies. These bears, they do swim in some pretty cold water. So I'm curious to see how that's going to work compared to, it's a lot springier and coarser than seal fur. Anyway, a little bit of lining up the fibers so that the wing comes out neat and clean. Measure it up. I don't want it too long, just kind of to about half.
You're not centered, Florian.
I'm not centered?
Nope, the fly is off to the side.
Oh, sorry. My camera is at a bit of an angle here.
Yeah.
There you go. So you can now see what I'm doing. So here's the
Nope,
measurement.
still not.
Oh, it's okay for mine.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, what? Ah,
Okay for mine too.
Mine's
I'm good.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's put on the wing here. So I was afraid you're telling me that my wing is not centered. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is serious. This is very serious. Anyway, so put on the wing up top. Hold on to it while you're securing it. This is 6/0 thread, so I'm pulling here as hard as it lets me. Okay, and then once I'm satisfied, let go. Okay, so this is secured to my satisfaction. I'm going to trim the waist up front. Look for any other stray bits. Okay, look on camera to actually see if there are any more stray bits. And now bring the thread back to attach the crystal flash. Now I do have a folded clump. So what I do is I take 2, 3, maximum 4. 4 is probably a little much. Fibers of the crystal flash, and then I just fold it into a bunch that's about the length that I think is appropriate. Okay, and then what I do is I fold it here one last time. So this takes a little bit of fumbling around. I fold it one more time, so I end up with essentially a loop in my hand. Okay, then I slip this loop over the head of the fly, line up the fibers and hold them on either side, and start, while still holding it, start wrapping my thread over. Okay, so I'm just going backwards to line it up to the point where I've tied my polar bear. Once I've done all of this, this is sitting nicely on top. Okay, I just go forward, make sure I cover everything up nice and tidy, and then get my whip finisher if I can still find it. And do a couple of finishes. One. And two. Okay. Now I'm going to take this. These fibers are not perfectly measured to size here, so I can still take that clump of crystal flash between my fingers, measure it up here a little bit, and trim it so that it's even with a polar bear. Okay. And that's what the finished fly looks like, except for one remaining ingredient, which is, of course, good old trusty hard as nails. Okay, so give it a nice coat. Cover all sides. And with the non-rotary vise, you have the advantage of turning this into a position where it's going to seep a little bit backwards. It's not going to go towards your hook eye, right? So that's the fly.
Nice.
Very nice tie.
Very good. Thank you.
Very good.
So we'll see. I haven't fished it yet, so it'll be a while. But it looks promising. I think I'm going to try it on the streams here. And there's a whole set of these things where you just vary the wing, vary the, you know, color of a tail hackle if you put one, or a throat, you know. It's an endless combination of things. So it's basically just a basic silver body that's done the same way. If you use Mylar, it's nice to put a rib on there and then start to vary the other ingredients. So anyway, fun stuff to play with, and they look kind of cool. I think these hooks are a bit on the large size, but I do like tying on these hooks because they just look very fishy and nice. I don't know. They catch my eye. I don't know how well they catch fish, but they sure have that advantage.
Yeah, they're artwork. They're not tools.
Well, the reason they've been around for a while is they must have caught fish somewhere along the way.
They do.
Yeah. So anyway, I just thought that a bit more of a classic, you know, something with a classic looking hook and a bit of polar bear there for extra excitement, you know.
That's a nice fly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful fly.
So once again, thanks, guys.
Yeah, very good, guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next
Thanks,
week.
guys.
Sandy, a quick question for you. I may have missed it at the outset. What color bunny leech were you and Dale using on Bundle? Oh,
Sandy, I think's gone.
oh, he's already gone. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll send him an email.
Do you guys fish anywhere where there are green drakes?
I don't know if there's green drakes here, maybe on the Cowichan, but
No, not in Victoria, no, but I mean, you know, interior, close to the Alberta border, places like that.
well, I fished them on the Livingston and the Crow, but
Yeah. We know where to fish these things in Alberta. That's okay. But I'm just kind of wondering if there's any use me showing one of these olive stimulators.
you know, I would bet a stimulator because there are similar types of insects that hatch on the cowichan. So I would not that size, but I think larger size, like some of the stoneflies that you get around here. Stimulator is always a good pattern to have because it floats like a cork.
Yeah, this is the smaller size, right? So here I
Yeah.
was doing the 10s and the 12s.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of a general attractor pattern. And what caught my eye with this one is that it doesn't have that sort of garish two-tone complicated, you know, you have two colors of dubbing, then you have two colors of hackle, yada, yada, yada. This is just same hackle throughout, one single color of dubbing, kind of a uniform, a little bit more of a drab pattern that I thought was kind of the interesting feature about it.
Well, you know, you could tie that in tan and fish it like a sedge, right?
Yeah, I mean, sure, or you could do good old Mikulak, right?
Yeah.
And actually, after that email exchange with Ron, I'm beginning to wonder if one couldn't just sort of take that Mikulak idea and cross it with that Goddard sedge, with clipping the hair, right? So you get you actually get to use, because a lot of the times, you know, if your deer hair is long enough, you're throwing that best floating part of the hair, which is towards the butts.
Yeah.
I don't know what a fly tied like that with the butt ends basically, and rather than trimming it all the way down to a short, just leave it a little bit wetter and bushier, and you just don't have those fine tips there. But I think that's really more for the fisherman than for the fish.
And then there's these guys.
Yeah, the SA hoppers, yeah. Which is what you do after you've learned to tie stimulators.
Yes.
The stimulator is the learning fly, I guess. So you can probably stop recording, Dave.
Yeah, I'll do that.
All the secret stuff that we talk about afterwards, you know, that needs to be taken down.
Exactly.
Right?
You're gonna have to edit the end of the recording off.